Hello, Warren. How are you, my friend?
Good, thank you.
Oh,
Good to be here.
fantastic. Always lovely to be here. So this week we concluded the very famous series, Those People, and we talked about those critical people. What is being critical and how different is it from criticism?
Okay, so I would define being critical as finding fault. So it is looking for something that is wrong. And somebody who is critical is more of like a characteristic. So compared to criticism, which is giving as to one off. So this is what I think is wrong. So you would want constructive criticism, which is going to be healthy, but you would not want to be known as a critical person, because that means you are always finding fault. So you can't be a constructive critical person. That's going to be very difficult. So criticism in itself is not necessarily negative.
Okay.
But being continuously critical is a mindset, it's an attitude, and it is something that is going to not always bring about the best results.
Listen, Warren, most of us always feel like we have to say something. So we don't really understand the difference at most times between being critical and criticism. So how important is it for us to evaluate first our intentions before being verbally critical?
So there are two things. There's the intention and there's the objective.
Sure.
So the intention is the driving force.
Okay.
The objective is the goal.
Uh-huh.
So what is my intention? What is my motive for wanting to say this? And you've got to check that. And you've got to make sure that it is a godly motive. Then you've got to ask yourself, what is the goal? So if my motive is because I want to point this out because it is necessary and I believe that it is godly, good motive. If it's a motive that is selfish, a motive that is maybe malicious, which means I want to hurt the other person, and in Afrikaans we use this thing, jy kry lekker.
Yes.
Okay, which is difficult to explain in English. Like it's like you get nice, like it doesn't work. But the whole thing is, I get some sort of enjoyment when I point out your faults. And if that is your motive, then Tula, you must rather not just say anything, because you're starting off on the wrong motive.
True.
And then ask yourself, what is the objective? Is the objective for me to help that person in their walk with the Lord and for them to be able to become better in the criticism that I'm giving? If that's the goal, then look for an opportunity, and always to do it in love. And that's the tough part, because often we criticize and we want to point things out, but there's very little love. It comes with agitation, with irritation.
True.
Maybe with a little bit of being obnoxious about it.
Yes.
You know, like I'm right, you wrong type. And the slightest smell of that, and the person that you're giving it to is going to close up shop and not be interested.
You basically close off the conversation.
That's right.
Any potential conversation. I completely agree with you, Warren. So often as a human being, when someone is critical with me, I often want to respond because I feel I know my truth and I want to defend my truth, or I know my side of the story and this is it. But should we always respond to critical people and their critical questions? And how best can we discern in order for us to know whether we should or should not respond?
Okay, so I'm going to criticize you quickly. Are you ready?
Depends.
You don't always respond. So you said that as a human you want to, and that's interesting because you're actually very good at not responding. So that's a constructive criticism. Now let's look at, if you know that you're right, you have to ask yourself the question, is this worth me trying to defend?
Sure.
When I know that I am right. So am I now going to try and prove a point just to prove that I am right when I know that I am right? Then it's mute. I don't have to prove the point.
Yeah.
Unless It is going to help the person to see if it's something small and irrelevant, then it's not an issue.
True.
As to try and now defend, because often becoming defensive about it is going to do more damage than if you just look, it's such a minor thing, like I'm not actually worried. Like if you really think that is how I would react, then it's more your perception than the reality.
That's
and
true.
Everybody who knows me knows that that's not how I'm going to do it. So I'm not even going to fuel what you are saying by giving it my attention. So that would be the one part. The other part is, how do we know with wisdom when to respond? And that's the important thing.
Yeah.
We never want to react, because that is the defense. And when we react, that defense actually becomes an attack.
True.
And it's going to close doors now, the other way around. So to the person who is giving the criticism, and when you read the scriptures, and the book of Proverbs is going to hit you hard again, it's going to tell you that if you don't want to receive any correction, you are literally doing your own soul damage.
Sure.
And that's tough. So the wise person is going to listen.
Yeah.
And going to encourage receiving constructive criticism. Now, constructive criticism sounds nice. It's not.
It's painful.
It's still painful. It still hurts. But it's necessary. So it's being willing to receive that. And here's the big thing, is you always need to invite the Lord in.
True.
So how do I know when to respond or not? You're going to ask the Lord and say, Lord, you know my heart. Lord, you know what the situation is. You know the truth. You know everybody's perspective on this. Is this something that I need to respond to? And if you feel that I need to, in a godly way, I need to be able to explain what the situation is. Immediately, your thinking changes, your whole approach changes, your attitude changes, because now, who are you consulting with? You're consulting with God instead of consulting with self.
True.
And trying to protect self. And that's the biggest thing, is, am I being mindful only of me? And how does this reflect on me? That's not actually the biggest question.
Sure.
The biggest question is, how does this reflect on God? I'm his ambassador. I'm his representative. So if this is something that's going to reflect poorly on him, and it's something that I need to respond to, then Lord, give me the wisdom. Give me the words. Help me to do it in a godly way. Immediately, the attitude is different compared to, what did you just say about me?
Yeah.
What? Do you know what you do? You say that about me. Do you know? It's so different.
True.
So it's that consultation.
Sure. And lastly, Warren, how can we overcome our own critical nature?
Sure. Choose purpose over popularity.
Touché.
Yep. Our Choose series, we did at the end of last year. And it's when you know that your calling is far greater. You've got work to do that is far bigger than anything that these minor, petty little things are dealing with. And that is the work of the Lord. We're here for an eternal purpose. That's why God has created us. And I can almost guarantee you, Anella, the majority of all of the criticisms, the majority of all of the things that are ever going to be thrown at us are worldly, temporary, rubbish.
True.
And when you evaluate it like that, and you say, what is the eternal perspective on that? Okay, so for all of eternity, I'm going to look back on this, and that's going to worry me for all of eternity. No, it's not. It's such a small, minor thing that, so do I have to go and tell the person this because my opinion actually counts more than God's opinion? That's what breeds a critical nature, is what I think is right must be what happens. Whoa, what happens about what God thinks is right? Is God going to be critical like that? No. his approach is always going to be different. It's going to be loving, it's going to be caring, it's going to be encouraging, uplifting, edifying. That's God's approach. Our approach, selfish, critical, irritated, agitated, I'm better, obnoxious, and you've got to see the difference there.